All right, here we go. All
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Okay.
So you can see my screen, yes?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So thank you for giving me the time to chat about this. I know forums aren't exciting to most people, but this is exciting to me because I do feel like it was really time. I've been working in the school since 2000. We've been using the old form for a long time. It had some strengths, but there were a lot of places that had room for improvement. And I think we didn't just change the form, we changed the form, and then we were able to kind of change the focus and make some changes kind of globally about how we're approaching things based on the point of the new form. So it's been good for the department. We have definitely everyone in the department has had training, extensive training on the form, and I think it's a learning curve. A lot of us have been using the old one for a very long time, but I think everyone's making a great effort at adapting. So that's been great. All right, so we're going to dive in. So there's a lot of strengths to the new IEP. These are the ones that I feel like are the most important things that we're seeing. So this new form really places the student at the center of the team discussion. And as I go through it, I can point out kind of some of the changes, but right off the bat, the first page is the student and parent concerns, and then the student's vision, which there wasn't really a student vision in the last IEP. So that's really cool. It emphasizes the caregiver and student voice before the meeting, during the meeting, and after. So that's great. It definitely increases opportunities for collaboration between the general ed teachers and the special education staff because there is a lot, well, because we're using a lot more data in the new form. So we are getting a lot of more information to come to the table from the general education staff to help us guide our decisions, which has been great. And then, like I said, using more data in the decision-making process. Okay. So like I said, this is the first page. And right off the bat, it's great to start with the student and parent concerns because when we're writing the IEP, that's really the thing that we want to focus on, particularly for students that are older and able to share with us what their concerns are. That's been a great opportunity. We're really making every effort to we're definitely inviting every student over 14. And then under 14, we are giving kind of talking to families, talking to teachers, deciding what students may be ready to participate in their own IEP meeting. Sometimes we're asking the students if they would like to join. Sometimes they say no, so we can different teachers are doing different things. They may be doing an interview. They might be taking a video of them, asking them these questions and having the student answer the questions on video. For our little ones, obviously, we're not bringing a 3-year-old to an IEP meeting. But the teachers are bringing work samples. So they might ask the student, a 4-year-old, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And, they want to be an astronaut or whatever they want to do. And they draw a little picture of it. And so the teachers are bringing that to the meeting. So we're able to put things in here and we're really accommodating for every need. So even students who may be nonverbal, we may give them 2 choices and say, hey, which would you like to learn, this or this? And then they make a choice, and then we're able to indicate that they chose that they wanted to learn from a field of 2 this. So that part's been really fun to see. And it's really fun to see what different teachers are doing, gathering that information in different ways. For the older kids from 14 to 22, we're asking them their vision and their post-secondary goals. So what they want to do while they're in high school, what they're thinking of doing after high school in terms of education or work, and what their independent living plans are, which is interesting to hear. And then as a team, we always did have a vision. So we're still having a team vision, and we want to make sure that our vision is encompassing the student's vision as best that we can. So I like that we're really getting the student's voice into the IEP. Okay. The next page is the student profile. So we're still identifying what the disability is that the students have. We used to have on the IEP like a primary, secondary disability. Now we can kind of we don't have to do that. We can just indicate which ones they are presenting with. And then 2 areas that are new. there's an English learner section. So for our students that receive ELL services, we have the ability to comment on how those needs may impact the needs of their special education needs. So it gives us a chance to collaborate with that ELL teacher, have them at the meeting, talk about what they're working on, their ELL goals, and how those needs might impact their ability to reach their goals, their special education goals. And then in terms of assistive technology, there's a place to mark if the student does require assistive technology devices or services. And that assistive technology can be very, very low tech to very, very high tech. So if a student is using read aloud, or if a student is using spell check, or they are doing any of the things on the Chromebook, that is assistive technology. That is, yes, they are using those services. And then if you answer yes, you just have to indicate where if they do have a need in the assistive technology realm, where is that addressed in the IEP? Is it an accommodation that they're able to have text read aloud to them from their Chromebook? Or, are we working on a goal because they need to access a special program on the computer to be able to allow them to access their curriculum? So you just have to indicate where that is going to be addressed in the IEP. If they have the need, where are we going to address that? Okay, and then what they did with this new form is broke the present levels of functioning into 4 separate areas. So it's called the present levels of academic achievement and functional performance. So you might hear someone refer to it as PLAF, which is very hard to say. So I just call it present levels. But there's 4 different areas that they break that into. So the first area we're considering is academic. The second area is behavior, social, emotional. The third area is communication. And then the fourth is additional areas, and I'll get into what that is. So the first one, academics. This is what it will look like. Now, when you get your student's IEP, it will not all be on one page because we have a lot of information to put in here. So this leftmost column has so much in it that this all gets pushed down. It's usually a couple pages long. But in the left column, we're going to talk about their current academic performance. And we're really, like I said, really focusing on data and making sure that we are being very clear on what the student is able to do and what needs they may have. So this is where we're going to find from the old IEP, it was called Key Evaluation Summary and Results. So you might see should see the testing results from your child's last eligibility testing or any other testing in the academic area that they've had since then. That would be in this area. You'll see some classroom performance stuff probably. You may find MCAS scores in here, FastBridge scores. This is where you're going to have all the information about how they are currently performing in their academics. And then in the next column, you'll have strengths, interests, and preferences in terms of academics. And then in the right column, what is the impact of their disability, on how is their disability affecting their ability to make progress in this area. A big change is if your child has autism. When a child has autism, we have a list of questions that we need to make sure we're addressing with every IEP. And it used to be the list was just kind of separate. You would do that after you kind of went through all the sections of the IEP. But I like that now they've embedded each autism specific question into the section of the IEP that it fits. So in this particular case, the first autism specific question is, does the student have needs resulting from the disability that impact progress in their curriculum? And if the answer is yes, again, you have that box that says, okay, yes, you're just indicating a need. Now tell me where in the IEP are you going to address that need? Do they just need to have some accommodations and modifications? Or do they need goals and services around those needs? Or is there something in additional information that talks about that particular thing? Any questions so far? Okay. So the next present levels is behavior, social, emotional. So this is where you're going to see any information about those areas that your child may or may not be struggling with. If the child had some behavioral observations done or an BA or something like that, you might find that in this area. If the psychologist did a BASC or anything like that, you might find the present levels in this area. Again, same thing, strengths and interests and impact of their disability, how it does affect that behavior, social, emotional area. And then if you remember from the last IEP, it wasn't actually in the IEP, but there we are required to talk about bullying at IEP meetings because students with disabilities may be more likely to be target of bullying, or potentially be some of their behaviors may be perceived as bullying themselves. So we want to make sure we're talking about the student's disability, what that looks like in relation to bullying. And if it is determined that it could be a need or it is a need, then we have to specify on the right side, how are we addressing those in the IEP specifically? So what skills do they need that they don't have to prevent bullying? And then how are we going to address those? So I like that that is now freely in the flow of the IEP. So we're going to address that. And then your autism specific questions related to behavior, social, and emotional needs are found here. You can see those listed out. If your student does not have autism, these would not show up on your IEP. So your child's IEP, so you wouldn't even see them, but they're going to be there if your child does have that diagnosis. The next section is communication. So that's any particularly speech and language needs. Same layout, current performance. So you'll see your speech language pathology, pathologists' test results in there, strengths, interests, and preferences, that area, and how their communication disability may impact their performance. They added in, this is new, does the student require the use of augmentative or alternative communication? If you answer yes, of course, they want to know more about that, which is great. So how does the team address those needs? You choose what the needs are. And then again, where are we addressing that? Are we giving them a goal on how to use their device? Are we just accommodating? Are we giving them services with the speech and language pathologist or assistive tech specialist on how to use that device? There's your autism specific question related to communication and where those would be addressed in the IEP. And then additional areas. This is my PT shout out with my little exercise people. This is where PT would go. So OT, PT, any vision needs, deaf or hard of hearing needs, orientation and mobility needs, or pre-vocational needs would go in here. So this is kind of a catch-all of anything that doesn't fit in the other areas. And then there's some specific questions. Again, if your student is indicated that they have a diagnosis that they are deaf or hard of hearing, or they are blind or visually impaired, they want to know where we're addressing those needs in the IEP. So again, if that doesn't apply to your student, you won't see that part in your IEP. It doesn't show up. Okay. The post-secondary transition planning was formerly known as the transition planning form. So now it is embedded. It shows up in all IEPs for students who will turn 14 within their IEP year. So we complete that. It encompasses their strengths, interests, and preferences related to their time after they leave us. And it helps determine any vocational or post-secondary needs. It's pretty chunky, which is great. It gets a lot of information. A lot of times the teachers will interview the students before the meeting to find out what they're thinking about in terms of post-secondary. Do they want to go to school? Do they want to go to work? What do they think about living? Do they want to live on their own? Are they going to live with mom forever? And then we talk about how that their disability may impact their success in their goals there. And so it kind of guides and tells us where we'll need to address those areas in the IEP. And then they included like the projected date of graduation, the planned course of study. For the older students, for the high school students, you'll see, okay, they need this many credits for English, and this is how many they have. They need this many for math, et cetera, et cetera. For the younger kids, it usually just says something to the effect of, currently making progress towards, graduation requirements. And then this is nice if the child has involvement of outside agencies, maybe Department of Developmental Services, or if they're involved with any, I'm blanking on the name of the vocational. They've changed it so many times. Help me out, Donna. What's the, I can't remember.
Rehab or whatever it's called now.
Yeah, Mass Rehab. It's
Mass
changed
Rehab, yeah.
names. What's that?
It was Mass Rehab.
Yeah,
Yeah,
MRC.
Well,
They
isn't it
have a
math
new,
ability is one of them too?
yeah,
Mass
Mass Ability.
abilities.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I knew
It
that
was
was the
it
new
was
name.
Mass
There was an
Rehab.
old
Now
name and a new name.
Yeah, it's hard to follow.
any of the social service agencies that are available, if they're involved with the student, it's great that we have a spot now where we can have it in the IEP, because we want to make sure that with parent permission, we have the ability to connect with those agencies and work together to make sure the transition plan for those students is solid. For students who need to transfer the rights when they're turning 18, they indicate, and this was on the old one as well, I think, if they're transferring rights, if they're keeping the rights for themselves, if they're sharing with the family, that kind of thing. I'm sorry, that's the decision-making options right there.
That was not on the previous one though, the connections with the local agencies. That wasn't on
It
the.
wasn't right. No, it wasn't right in the middle of the IEP. Like, so it was, you'd
Okay.
have to kind of poke around to find it.
Yep.
So that's
Makes
nice. And then this form just also prompts us to have those conversations about making a 688 referral for our students that have more significant needs. Are they exiting special education? Yes. Did we discuss if they are appropriate for a 688 referral? Yes or no, if they are appropriate. And it just kind of makes sure, kind of keeps everyone on the same page to make sure, because those referrals, the need for the referral comes out of the meeting, but I personally have to be the one to make the referral. So this helps us all make sure that we're staying on track with those referrals, because we want to make sure that, again, that the agencies are ready for our students when they're ready to age out of our program or to graduate. Okay, this is a big change. This was a big change for our staff. This is a big change for families. So the accommodations and modifications used to be under what we called PLEP A and PLEP B, present levels of educational performance. And what it would say is, how does the disability impact the student's performance? And then what accommodations do they need? And we might have had 20 things just listed out in a row. The way that they have it set up now is they broke it out into different settings. So you have your classroom accommodation settings, any accommodations that they would need in a non-academic session setting like lunch or recess, any accommodations that they might need for extracurricular activities, and then especially for our students who are older and participating in community or vocational things, what kind of accommodations they would need in those areas. And then across the top, it breaks the accommodations out into what type of accommodation they are. So the presentation of instruction is what is an accommodation on how the teacher is going to give the information that they want to convey to the student. So maybe they are going to chunk the information into smaller bits for them, or maybe they are going to present in writing versus presenting orally to them, or they're going to provide them with a written copy of notes. So that's how we're going to present the information to the student. What kind of accommodations do they need for that? The response is, how are we going to get the information that the student knows back to us? What kind of accommodation might we need for that? So maybe the student is going to type their responses instead of writing them. Or maybe the student is going to orally respond, orally present a project versus having to type a 5-page paper or something. How are we going to accommodate students getting the same information, and we're expecting them to show us the same curriculum back, but we're going to accommodate for their needs. So we're going to change how we expect them to respond. The timing and scheduling. So maybe the student has extra time to complete assignments up to a time and a half. Or maybe we are going to give the student frequent sensory breaks or frequent breaks in the classroom to break up their day a little bit. And then the setting or the environment, what kinds of things are we going to change to their classroom? Maybe they're going to have preferential seating. Maybe they're going to, I don't know, use a timer on their desk. That might be something. So, I mean, there's flexibility. The teachers have flexibility because some things fit in multiple categories. So we want to make sure they're all there, but this just helps kind of guide And one of the things that I've loved about this process is sometimes on the old IEP, your student would be in kindergarten, first grade, we'd have some accommodations, you'd go to the second grade meeting, that team would add some more accommodations. And by the time they got to fifth grade, there was 727 accommodations, which, as you know, the more there are, if there's so many like that, it really makes it impossible to be sure that you're doing a good job of providing all of those accommodations. So this has been a great opportunity for our teachers to really look at the list and at that team meeting, because we have to go through one by one and organize them. Not at the meeting, we don't have to organize them, but to really say, especially with this, if the student is there, hey, Johnny, are you really still using a pencil grip? Like, is that helping you? And are you using it regularly? Or teacher, do you see him using the pencil grip normally? And so it gives us the opportunity to say, yeah, absolutely. He definitely still needs it. Awesome. Keeping it on, no problem. No, I don't like using that. It actually makes it harder for me to write. And then the OT says, okay, yep, I agree. I see that. And so we can I tell everyone to clean house, because I want to keep every accommodation that the student needs on there, but sometimes they just get left on and they don't need them anymore, or they don't want them. So that's been a great way to kind of have that conversation in meetings. And then the modifications down below, again, you're modifying different settings, but are we modifying, meaning is the student getting a different curriculum? So the content, are we changing the content of their curriculum? Are they actually learning a parallel curriculum from what the grade level curriculum is for that? Are we instructing them in a completely different way than we're instructing the other students? Or are we expecting them to give us back not the same information that we're expecting grade level peers to give back? So those are broken out as well. And most students have definitely a lot of accommodations. And then usually there's fewer modifications, just because a lot of our students can still access the general ed curriculum with the accommodations. So sometimes you'll see no modifications on IEP. So depending on your students' needs, you'll see that there. Okay, so then we have goals. Of course, we have goals. And the nice thing, again, is this new IEP really encourages everyone to collect the data from the student, from the teachers, from the classroom teachers, from the special ed teachers, to pinpoint the specific needs. And so the goal area might be ELA, it might be math, it might be executive functioning needs, it might be OT, who knows, whatever the student needs. And then the baseline here, the baseline is specific here to the goal. So you shouldn't see 7 paragraphs of all the things the student can do. What you should see is, this is the baseline. The team has written a goal. Let's say that the goal is for organizational skills. So there's a general goal for organizational skills. That baseline is going to be specific to how are they using the graphic organizer? How are they keeping their folder organized? How are they putting together their writing projects, whatnot? So that baseline is just going to be giving you information about their current performance toward this goal. So they'll have the goal or the target there. Then the criteria, so it's measurable. So when are we going to say the student has achieved their goal? When they can do it 80% of the time, then have they achieved it 90% of the time? That's up to the team to decide, or the team to decide. How are we measuring the progress? Are we using observational data? Are we keeping data tracking sheets? Are we using curriculum-based measures? Are we, whatever kind of method that we're using to be able to keep track of their progress toward their goal? How frequently is the progress measured? And that depends on the skill that the teacher's looking at. Some things they want to monitor more frequently. Some things can go a little bit longer when you're looking for progress. And then who will measure the progress? Typically, if it's an academic goal, it's probably the special education teacher. They may also write classroom teacher in there if they're helping progress monitor as well. It might be, if it's a PT goal, it's going to be the PT, OT, et cetera. And then under that main goal, you're going to have your short-term objectives or benchmarks, which are basically like your little stepping stones to get up to that goal. So they'll be a little bit more specific, probably. They may be steps in a line to go toward it, or they may be a few different skills that the teacher wants them to achieve to be able to say that they've met that goal. But again, these have to be measurable as well. So are they doing whatever the baseline or whatever the benchmark is? Are they doing it in 4 out of 5 opportunities? Are they doing it with 80% accuracy? Those are the kinds of things you'll see in there. Okay, participation in the general education setting. So it's asking, can all of the students' needs be met in the general education setting with or without the use of aids and services? So if your student is receiving any services outside of the regular education classroom, then the answer to this is that no, their needs can't be met in the general education setting. And then we have to provide an explanation. And this is definitely the state's way to make sure that we're being very thoughtful about why we're separating students from their general education classroom and making sure we're able to justify that. So here we're explaining maybe the student needs to be taught in a quieter environment. They need more explicit instruction or more direct instruction that can't happen in the regular education classroom. They might need PT, and you can't do skipping and jumping jacks in kindergarten when every other kid is going to get distracted and want to join. But I'm just kidding. But those kinds of things would be what you would see written in there. And then you're going to see the service delivery. And I put a couple services in here just to give you an example of what this is going to look like when you see it at home. So this is only showing the C grid. There's an A grid and a B grid. Hold on, let me just see. Yeah, okay. So here's an example. So the A grid is consultation. So those are services that are not direct services to your student. So that might be that the behavior specialist is consulting with the classroom teacher, or the OT and speech therapist need to consult, or whatever. Sometimes we can write in consultation with parents if there's things that need to happen with the parent and the school personnel as well. So that's where you'll see any services, consultation services there. The B grid are special education services, but that they're happening in the general education classrooms. So if we have a special education teacher that pushes into a class, that you might see, a student receives writing support in the general education classroom for, 3 times 30 minutes a week or whatnot. And then the C grid is where you see those services that are outside of the general education setting. So that's where you might see physical therapy, ELA here. This would be an example of a special education teacher that's pulling the student out of class for 6. So it's the way it's written, 5 times 60 minutes per 5-day cycle. So it means 60 minutes a day, right? Once a day for 60 minutes per week. And then typically the IEP goes for a year. And so usually the dates will be from the date of start of the IEP to the day before the end of the IEP. But sometimes we will have services that end at the end of a school year, particularly for like our 6th graders transitioning to 7th grade, because sometimes the model has to shift a little bit. So you might see an end date and then a new start date and an end date. One of the really nice things about this IEP is that our extended year school year programming is a separate grid. So in the old IEP, we had the current year's services and the extended year services and then the next year's services. So it was it was confusing and hard to follow. It was a lot of information, especially if the student got a lot of services. So now we have the question here, does the student require a different duration to their school program, including the length of day or year, so that they can receive their education? And if it's determined that the student is showing either significantly slow progress or shows regression after breaks, longer holiday breaks and whatnot, if it's determined that does happen again, we're collecting the data to show that, then yes, they might require extended school year programming. And here again, we're explaining why they would need that different schedule, why they would need an extended school year. And that's where that would be. And then we have a whole separate grid, same grid, but a separate grid that would show any summer services that are required on that grid as well. After the IEP meeting is over, the parents are provided with meeting notes. And by mass law, we're required to provide proposed goal areas, not necessarily exact goal and individual benchmarks coming out of the meeting, but what the areas of need are and where we're proposing goals in those areas. The meeting notes should have key points of discussion, and then we're required to provide a proposed service delivery grid. And then following your IEP meeting, you'll be mailed a proposed IEP and placement pages for your child in 2 weeks. You should take your time to review the IEP. Please reach out to the special education teacher, related service providers, or my office if there's particular questions that we might be able to answer for you. And then there's 3 options on the signature page. You can accept the IEP and placement as developed. You can reject portions of the IEP or placement, or you can reject the IEP as developed. And any accepted services in the IEP will begin once that IEP is returned signed to my office. So we encourage people to take a look and reach out with questions, because we want services to get started, especially for our new, students that are just starting on an IEP. We want to get those started as soon as possible. So, all right. That was a lot I threw at you. Any questions or comments or?
I'm really happy that we recorded this. I hope some people can take advantage of it. Because it is overwhelming. It's one of those things, I think, that you realize, oh my God, what am I getting into, and how do I, but it feels better than the old one. It really does.
Yes, I think it feels better for everybody. I think another big emphasis that I'm trying to share with people is that this is a document for the student and the family. And so our language needs to reflect that. So I'm trying to really encourage my staff to make sure that, there's a lot of educational mumbo jumbo and clinical mumbo jumbo, and just making sure that families are able to, or teachers or whoever, be able to pick up that IEP and understand what the student's challenges are and what the student needs to be able to overcome those challenges. So I like that piece of it. And it's because it's more simplistic. It just, the form in general, I think it lends itself to that a lot better. So that's been great.
And so the staff has been trained on this new IEP, obviously. So
Yes, we've had multiple trainings, and we have at our staff meet, I send weekly or bi-weekly emails. And at our staff meetings, I think my staff are sick of me, but we're constantly learning and noticing things and ways that we can make little improvements here and there. And I do review the IEPs. Destiny and I review every IEP that comes in our office. So we're really trying to make it more, it obviously is individualized. We want them to be individualized, but there's ways to make it more standardized to make sure our office is doing things. Everyone's kind of doing things in a similar way. So it's been great.
That makes it easier for the teachers, to kind of figure out what's happening with those,
right,
students in their class. If there's some common language, then it makes it easier to be doing the same service, right, to those kids that need the same service, Yes.
And then the students change special education teachers frequently, at least every year, and usually. And so to be able to just hand the IEP to the next teacher, obviously we do more than that, but but that they can pick up the document and know exactly, I wanted to look up what this accommodation is, or what, they know right where to go, because we're putting all the things in the same, everyone's doing the same thing. So that's been good too.
Are the classroom teachers, have they, and I'm not talking about special ed, I'm talking about the classroom teachers, have they been involved as well? Because sometimes I find that there are some struggles in accommodations, and that a general classroom teacher may not know that a student is on an IEP and have accommodations and have, various things that they're also going to be responsible for, especially like specials teachers. And so, have we also reached out to the general ed teachers to make them comfortable with it as well?
Yes. So in September, I did presentations at all 3 schools to the general education teachers. So that's been helpful. We have really pushed the need for better consultation between special education and general education teachers. And we are trying to find ways to find more time for that as well, to make sure that that is happening. I think at the middle school and high school, it's a little bit easier because they have, especially in the middle school, they have team meetings, and the special ed teacher and general ed teachers are part of that. I think in the elementary school, there are opportunities for the teachers to push into the classrooms a little bit more flexibly than at the middle school and high school. So that is happening. And then another big piece is that in preparation for our meetings, I'm having the staff gather a lot of that data ahead of time. So they are going to the teachers ahead of time and saying, hey, can you give me some samples, some writing samples? Can you tell me how they did on their FastBridge testing? Can you, share this information? And so they're ready so they know the students on IEPs. Amy, I hear what you're saying about the specials teachers. I think that's a little trickier. The classroom
I know it
teachers.
You
is.
mean like art and music?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's a
okay.
little trickier because obviously they need to know for sure. But we also don't want IEPs floating around buildings.
Right.
And so
Right.
It becomes definitely a little trickier for the special education teacher who wants to spend time with the classroom teacher to talk about, modifying a math homework. That seems to be more of a priority than probably touching base with the art teacher, but it's not any less important. But I think that that is probably an area where we could do better in. So, yeah.
Okay. Is there any other questions with regard to this topic?
I have a question about the goals on an IEP.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a goal for an IEP, is there service related to that goal?
Yep. So there should be some sort of service related to a goal. The consultation services wouldn't necessarily write their own goal, but they might be attached to, like, sometimes we'll have the speech language pathologist might be on consultation only. So they might be attached to a social worker's goal, like a social communication goal. So yes, there is overlap there. But yes, and then the B and C grid services, those should be attached to a goal. And on the form, I think I stopped sharing, but on the grid on the left, there's a section that shows what the goal number is, what service is related to that goal number.
And so there should definitely be a service for every goal. Or great, because if there's a goal, there's a goal, you've got to do something with it.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
If there's a goal, there should be a service. Yep.
Can I also ask about assistive technology? Yep. I think having the section separate is is really helpful. But just providing assistive technology versus I'm a person. I work in I work I work in this field, so just providing the technology like a Braille reader is not going to be very helpful for someone who can't use the device. Correct. Can you talk about how Greylock both, trains on those assistive technology devices, monitors effectiveness, and collects data on the effectiveness of AT?
Yep. So it depends. Of course, it's individualized. So it depends on the device and who needs to have the training on that device. So let's say for a student in particular, if we have a student who's using an AAC device for communication, they're nonverbal and they're communicating using that device. We might have the speech pathologist consult with the person that is like the company that does the trainings on the devices. That person might come into the building and train staff within the building. The speech pathologist would monitor how the student is using it in the different settings and make adjustments to that as appropriate. And so, you know, if it's something more general, like if it's something that's on the Chromebook, we have a lot of accommodations on the Chromebook. Like we have every Chromebook has the read write extension, which has read aloud. So if a student needs read aloud, access to read aloud, anything that they pull up on their Chromebook, the Google, the read write extension can read to them. That's something that all the students are taught as part of their curriculum. But and technically we don't have to put accommodations on the IEP if it's something that all students have access to. For me, that's just a personal thing. I like to have it on there because I want everyone to know the student needs it, even though everyone has access to it and it's available. That's great. But, you know, if Sally really needs to have it, I want it on there. So something like that, that kind of training happens naturally in the within the classroom. But certainly if we were seeing a student struggle with accessing their technology accommodations, we would certainly address that on an individual basis.
I think that's great because I think it is important to put on an IEP, specifically because not all of the documents that are provided by Greylock are accessible and can be used. Unfortunately, I know for my daughter, we get a lot of PDFs that are just images, and that's and you can't, like, I know because I know about screen readers, you can't screen read an image.
Right. Yep.
All right. Great questions. Thank you. Anybody else have any questions about the IEP? Okay, I'm going to stop recording so we can go on. And this is new to me, the recording, so bear with me.